everyone, it's Owen here from Urbane Cyclist. Today we're doing another bike breakdown in Cedarvale Park. Today we're riding the Marin Nicasio Plus. So you may already be familiar with this bike, maybe you're familiar with some of its siblings in this Nicasio series. The Nicasio 1 is a very popular, probably one of our best-selling bikes, period. There's also the Nicasio 2, but it's not a linear series. This is the Nicasio Plus. This is 650B with the same frame as the Nicasio 1. So you're still gonna see quick release wheels, same exact fork and frame, chromoly steel frame and fork. But the major difference is they've switched out the size of the tire and they've changed up the build kit and of course the color. So this is one of those bikes that hasn't changed much since they've introduced it, other than a fresh colorway recently with the nice green. I think this is a funny bike because it's kind of divisive in a, I'll say silly way, because a lot of folks don't know what to make of the tires. They say, oh, big tires mean slow, which is only half the truth. So the Nicasio performs as you'd want it to. It's consistent, it's smooth. It's actually not terribly heavy either, considering it's a full steel frame and fork. It hits that kind of happy medium for a lot of folks that are looking for something that's, you know, performance adjacent, but also very capable. Has rack mounts, fender mounts, all those kind of normal things you like to see on a utility focused bike, but with a little more fun kind of included in the design principles. So what do I like about the Nicasio Plus? So if you know anything about me, some may label me as a bit of a retro grouch, and if I'm talking personal preference, I like steel. I love 9-speed, and I like that this uses the Advent micro shifting system. It's honestly, it's a great feeling shifter. I love 9-speed chains because they last a lot longer. I find I don't have to baby my tech so much, which is another huge plus. And the final piece of the puzzle that I love is I love big tires, and I find almost every bike I've owned, I've overdone the tires. This is just perfect. So on your left, so I do see a lot of people looking beyond the Nicasio Plus. And I think when people shop for bikes, if they don't know a lot, they may say a couple things when they first walk in the bike shop. And one thing is, I want a fast bike and I want a light bike. And people often look past this bike because it has things that look maybe what people perceive to be slow, or maybe just, you know, not so sporty. Some people are drawn to the thin tubes, maybe the paint job, but these steel tubes are good at vibration dampening. So I'm surprised more people don't simply just ask, hey, I'd like a comfortable bike when they walk into a bike shop. But most people still have this speed performance kind of mindset when they're looking for their next bike. The other thing you're gonna see is a pretty big tire here. And that tire can be a little bit of a turnoff. These are the WTB Horizons. These are a 650B by 47. You'll notice a very smooth center section, but a little kind of like herringbone pattern on the side. So this means you're gonna have that benefit of a smooth, fast rolling tire in a straight line, but with a little more confidence if you are getting into the dirt or maybe a little bit of gravel. Let's talk a little bit about tires briefly. And I think a good way to talk about this is perception of speed. So if you have for example, a stiff frame with a thin tire, or a steel frame with a larger volume tire, if you're traveling the same speed on both those bikes, they're likely not going to feel the same. So the perceived speed of a harsher, stiffer frame is often going to feel faster because you're feeling all those little vibrations. The longer you ride, the more that tendency is going to become more uncomfortable. So yes, that has the immediacy of, wow, this feels light, fast, sporty, because it's like you're very aware of even maybe a lower speed. But once you move into a smoother vibration dampening frame like steel, and you're looking at a higher volume tire that is not necessarily a heavy tire, that means it's going to actually roll over bumps and rough terrain smoother, therefore it's going to feel slower for the same speed. So often I think people's perceived speed is this feels slow. But to me, if you actually are riding something hard, you're riding it far, you don't want the fast feeling, you want the smooth feeling with that kind of the true speed. So I think sometimes in a test ride, if you're comparing with a quote unquote sportier bike, maybe something that's aluminum and carbon, or a full carbon with thinner tires, you're gonna maybe feel that feels faster. But the perception of speed, I think, is the most important thing to think about when you're talking about the actual speed you're traveling, and also how you're really using the bike. For the average consumer, you don't need a ultralight bike. I stress the importance of having a kind of do it all bike, and this is, I think, why I'm drawn to this. It has kind of all my favorite things. It has high volume tires, it has a steel frame, it's gonna have disc brakes, it also has a nice wide range 9-speed 1x Advent setup, which I normally am not a huge fan of a 1x. I prefer a wide range 2x if I'm being really nitpicky, but frankly, what I like, I can't get out of the box, so I end up having to pay a lot more for that. And the reason I love this bike is it's actually a really good stepping stone bike. It's kind of like, you're not sure what you want to do. Maybe you want to do a little bit of light kind of weekend trips. Maybe you want to try a little touring. Maybe you want to try a little gravel, try a little road. The reality is this has rack mounts and fender mounts, so you can do a little bit of a load up. It's a great daily driver. It's also fun to ride on the weekends. And I think that's kind of what people forget about, is they sometimes are looking for a utility bike and forget to shop for the kind of aspirational riding they might want to do. And a bike like this, I think, opens up a lot more doors, because the increased comfort of a high volume tire, but then the increased capacity of a steel frame, along with lots of fender and rack mounts, means you can just kind of dress it up and accessorize it exactly how you intend to use it, or maybe how you didn't intend to use it, but you turn out you do use it that way. So I think these are kind of the reasons this bike is maybe rated highly among us bike nerds, because it's a very accessible price point and it kind of ticks a lot of the boxes for what we often opt in for when we're shopping for a bike. But I think by some people's maybe like not super up to date kind of tendencies, and it's just like, you think, oh, I want a light bike, because light is perceived to be good often. But I think that's one of the reasons people look past this. But again, I wouldn't call this a heavy bike, but I would call it a sturdy bike. It doesn't feel heavy when you're riding. It might not be the lightest if you have to hike up a ton of stairs, but personally, I find that confidence inspiring. And there's a reality too. If you do plan to load a bike down, it does have rack mounts and it does have fender mounts. So if you're actually going to put panniers on this, if you have a featherweight bike and intend to load it down, the unloaded handling versus the loaded handling are going to be drastically different, and you're probably not going to actually enjoy once you put some weight on it. So I think that's one of the reasons, or some of the reasons, that I think people often forget to kind of consider a bike like this. Another reason I really like this as kind of a stepping stone or a great introduction into kind of more like spirited, more adventurous riding is the fit. So I'm currently riding a 58. I'm usually between a 58 and a 60 at 6'2", or 188 centimeters. And I find, you can see here my seat's up a little high. It's a little more aggressive, and this is kind of a sportier fit for me. This is one of the few times I may not size down. I may opt for actually the 60, because this is a fairly tall stack and also a relatively short reach. So often my consideration is going to be for standover, which I don't have a ton of clearance on here for, but I personally like a taller front end and a little more reach. So I could go either way. Honestly, it depends on how I'm going to use it. That's kind of splitting hairs, but I think that's one of the reasons this is a little more approachable than a true road bike or more of the kind of gravel race setup. You'll notice a gentle kind of slope to this top tube, which means a little higher front end, which just means you're less hunched over the front. Because a lot of people see drop bars, and that's another thing they're like, will not talk about. They say, no, I don't want that. That has drop bars. So you can see there's kind of layers of reasons people might not choose this bike, even though it might be actually the best possible fit for them. So I think if you're kind of looking for a bit of a do-it-all bike, this is a really, really interesting choice. And I think it's actually kind of the bike a lot of people might not know they're shopping for, but is a perfect fit for them. So all in all, I think this is a very good all-arounder. It's a pretty fun bike, honestly. I think it's got a kind of muted appearance. It's pretty subtle, but it's a super blast to ride. I'd highly recommend checking it out. Number one thing though, you got to do a test drive, because I can talk all day about these bikes, but until you actually get it under you and feel how it rides, you'll never know what it really feels like.